Good evening. My name is Melissa McClammy. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Greenwich, and on behalf of the League, it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to our debate. The League of Women Voters of Greenwich is a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization that promotes informed and active participation in government. This election season, we're hosting a series of debates starting tonight. We've also published voters' guides, which contain information about the candidates, as well as information about where, when, and how to register to vote, how to vote early, how to vote absentee, and how to vote on election day. Our current voters' guide contains information about the candidates running for town-wide office, and it's available on our website. The League, this is important, does not support or oppose any political party or individual candidate for office. So as I said, tonight is the first in our series of debates in advance of the municipal elections. We have a live audience here, a sold-out audience at Greenwich Town Hall. We also have a television audience, courtesy of Greenwich Community Television. I want to thank everyone at Town Hall and at GCTV for their help in making this debate possible for the Greenwich community. I also want to thank our many, many volunteers. You saw some of them at the check-in desk. We have timers. There are many more who've worked behind the scenes to make sure that this debate is fair and that it runs smoothly. The debate is being recorded by GTTV, and it's going to be available on our website in a couple of days. You can visit our website to see the recordings of the debates and all the other information I mentioned. It's www.lwvgreenwich.org. Our moderator tonight is Anthony Presta. He is going to be assisted by Ms. Maya Coplet, a senior at Greenwich High School. And Mr. Presta is now going to tell you about the procedures we're going to follow tonight. Again, welcome. Thank you for coming. Ms. Presta.
So again, thank you for the introduction. My name is Anthony Presta. Just really briefly about myself, I'm a resident of Wilton. I'm an unaffiliated voter. The League was looking for somebody boring and they landed on me. So here I am. I also am going to have a lot of help here from Maya, so we appreciate that. And I have a little opening remark to offer to everybody. So first, welcome. Tonight we'll hear from the candidates for Board of Selectmen. We'll begin with the two candidates for Selectmen. We have Rachel Khanna and we have Lauren Rabin. And then at approximately 7:45, we'll take a short break, just really enough time for us to switch over so that we can hear from the candidates for First Selectman, who I'll introduce when it is time. We're going to follow the following guidelines, which are designed to allow each candidate a fair opportunity to express their views and to facilitate the sharing of ideas. The order of the questions has been determined in advance of the debate. The order in which the candidates will respond to the first question has already been determined in advance, and then the candidates are going to take turns being the first to respond to each question that follows. Each candidate is also going to be given an equal amount of time to present their views over the course of the debate. Timers are going to track the time and hold up signs to indicate to the candidates how much cumulative time they have, they've used, excuse me. Each candidate is going to have 1 minute to make an opening statement at the beginning of the debate and 2 minutes to make a closing statement at the end. Again, the order was determined in advance of the debate. Timers are going to hold up signs that indicate when the candidates have 30 seconds, then 15 seconds left to speak, and then a stop sign to sign that, to signal that time is up. Now, just one last comment for the audience. Your presence here is already a show of your passion, and I have a list here of 20 questions that I'm supposed to get through, and I'm assuming some of you are the ones that offered those questions. And just to keep in mind, we ask respectfully to hold any sort of applause or cheering or verbalizations, things like that. Like I said, 20 questions is going to be tough to get through all of them, and obviously each clap, each cheer, each comment is going to slow us down that much more. So I really, really appreciate that if you can sort of save that stuff for the end. And we could give each candidate the maximum amount of time to speak. With that said, we're looking forward to an informative, balanced, and fair debate. Thank you very much. All right, so we have Rachel Khanna will be offering the first opening remarks.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this evening. Thank you to all of you for participating and joining us. It's a pleasure to be back with you. I'm Rachel Khanna. I'm a 25-year resident of the Greenwich. I've raised my 4 daughters here who attended Greenwich Public Schools. And I've been an active member of the community. I served on the Parkway School PTA and on the RTM for 2 terms. Most recently, I served as the state representative for the 149th District. And in that role, I fought hard for Greenwich in a place that often ignores our community's needs. I'm the only person in this room who brought back millions of dollars for the district. $20 million for Central Middle School, $6.5 million for the Glenville Corridor Traffic Safety Project, and $400,000 for the library elevator upgrades at the Greenwich Library, and so much more. I know how to get things done, and I will continue to fight for our town to improve the quality of life and safety of our residents. We can have a town that works for everyone and make sure that families and businesses have what they need to build a future here like we did. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And the opening statement from Lauren Rabin.
Thanks, everyone. Good evening. And we had quite a few emails about different debates that we're having, so I made a mistake with my opening and closing remarks. So you're going to hear the end of the story first. If you like White Lotus, you're going to get the end before the beginning. So I'm going to give you my closing statement, but I think it'll serve also as an opening statement. So Greenwich is a community that we are all proud to call home. Over the past 6 years, I have worked every day to keep our town strong, keeping taxes affordable for all, and making our neighborhoods safer, supporting our schools, and preserving the qualities that make Greenwich special. I know how to get things done because I've been doing it, not with headlines or partisanship, but with collaboration and results that residents can see and feel. As your selectwoman, I promise to keep it simple. I'll continue to lead with steady hands and a focus on the people of Greenwich, not politics. I humbly ask for your support to keep Greenwich moving responsibly, affordably, and together.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's get right into it. As I had offered in the opening remarks, the order of the questions has been pre-decided, or at least, and also who goes first has been pre-decided. So candidate Khanna, the first question is started with you, and I'll read it right off here. So the question is, as you know, Greenwich runs on volunteer power. An important responsibility of the Board of Selectmen is to nominate or appoint candidates to many volunteer boards and commissions that oversee the critical work of this town. What steps would you support to better inform the public about volunteer roles available and the nomination and appointments process?
Thank you. I consider myself so fortunate to be living in a town that has so much talent. The Selectmen's Nominations Advisory Committee is the body responsible for recommending people to serve on boards and commissions, and it does great work. And I believe that we need to make sure that it remains nonpartisan. You know, if we have town residents who have a specific talent, the town should know so that we can make sure that we're attracting the most qualified candidates for the position. And we need to ensure that appointments are based on experience and merit and not patronage. And with that in mind, I believe that with the appointments process, as with other town functions and town responsibilities, we need to have more transparencies. We need more opportunities for public input. As a state representative, I use the time in between sessions to go out in the district to meet and talk to people. And I believe that we need to do more of that. For instance, on the budget, it doesn't make sense to me that the first time that the public has an opportunity to weigh in is when it's already been done. Again, we need more opportunities for public participation. And as with boards and commission, I think we need to make those positions, opening positions, known to everyone so we can make sure that we're attracting the most talent and the best talent to serve our town. Thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you. I am actually the Board of Selectmen liaison to the Selectmen's Nomination Advisory Committee. It's 11 members made up of Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated residents. And it's like a nominating committee. So their job is to talk about we have 24 boards, commissions, and committees. None of them are overseeing the budget for the town of Greenwich, but they all work on independent departments, whether that is a school building committee, IWWA, or as the RTM refers to it, Inland Water Courses, or Inland Wetlands and Water Courses Agency, 2 words or something like that. And we've worked really hard. When Fred and I first took office, they actually asked us a question to eliminate the RTM from appointing the members that the Board of Selectmen nominate. And we categorically said, no, we don't have all the answers. We're going to do the best we can, and we've done a darn good job at it, nominating these candidates. And then they go to the full RTM, 230 members, for their appointment. So there's your additional vetting. Every board is balanced that we nominate. It's balanced between Republicans, unaffiliated, and Democrats. What I do at every Board of Selectmen meeting is I always announce the opening. So in addition to the 11 people that are fanning out in the community, that's an opportunity to learn about positions. When we're out in the community, we're always talking. We'll know some of the skill sets that we're looking for. Like right now, we're looking for people on the Riverside School Building Committee. It is the 5th school building committee that we are assembling since Fred and I took office in 2019. And we've had some outstanding candidates. We have such a rich cadre of residents that are offering their skills and really make the town run in the way that it does.
Okay, thank you very much. Bai, would you like to offer the next question?
Hello.
Hi.
Candidates, how do you see the role of the Selectmen in Greenwich Town government? How will you measure whether you have been successful in this role?
So I think that's me first. So my current colleague, Janet Stone-McGuigan, and I, when we talk about our role as selectmen, we describe it as the assistant principals. So the first selectman is the principal, and we assist the first selectman in his duties. Our duties are assigned. We actually talk collaboratively. We try to have assignments that work with our skill sets. For example, I started on as liaison to the Commission on Aging. I talked about my Selectmen's Nomination Advisory Committee. So we serve as liaisons to various boards, commissions, and committees. We also act as ombudsman. That's my term. I got it from my professional career, where we're really trying to be open to all the residents and understand what you are thinking about, what you care about, what you're concerned about, so that we can bring those thoughts to our board and to the various departments that are in town hall to make improvements, for all the residents. It's also traffic authority, and I'm sure there's going to be questions about traffic. So we do things like approve speed limit changes, or we will approve different parking fees, or where residents could park or non-residents can park. Should we be putting up stop signs, things of that nature? We are also the police commission. Although the first selectman is the police commissioner, the 3 of us act as the commission. We've been through the citizens police, what's it called? I'm getting confused with CPAC, and where we all had to learn what it was like to be a policeman. So that was pretty exciting. Where else can I go? I guess I should give some time to Rachel.
Thank you. Well, I won't describe the role of the select women since you did it so well. But I think a key part of the role is listening and meeting with constituents throughout the district and hearing what their priorities are, because ultimately we represent the residents, and what residents are concerned about becomes our concern. As select women, we are advocates for residents. And while I was state representative, as I mentioned before, I continuously engaged with my constituents. The coffee shops in town have become like my second office. And since my service as state representative, I've remained engaged in the community through social media, a monthly email, and organizing community events. All of our constitutional officers came for community conversations that I organized, and I did that also through my service in bringing people down to inform our residents and constituents about things that were happening up in Hartford. I want to keep doing that. I want to keep hearing from residents and making sure that they inform me of what their priorities are. And I also want to focus on working with our first selectman on making a strategic plan for the town, because I believe that that's very important in leading our town into the future and making sure that we address all of the challenges that we are facing and that we will face in the future. Thank you.
I think I would add one more addition. Because we do have a plan of conservation and development. And one of the things that I was excited to lead was KPIs for the municipality. So how do we know that we're achieving the goals that we set out to address in our POCD? So that's another thing that the select women would be responsible for.
Okay, thank you very much. This next question, Ms. Kondo, you lead us off. The question goes, what will you do to reduce the political division we see in the town of Greenwich and enable the officials in Greenwich to work more collaboratively?
Need the mic on. Thank you. Yeah, the civility is something that keeps me up at night as I think about what the future holds for my 4 daughters. You know, we moved to Greenwich and it was a vibrant and diverse community. We have people from different parts of the world, people who have lived here for generations. We're all neighbors, and we should be able to talk to each other. I think, as I said before, I want to listen. I want to hear from everybody. As state representative, I worked across the aisle with my colleagues on legislation. I even broke with my party on some votes when it was in the best interest of constituents in the town. I've continuously engaged with constituents. And I also, you know, as state rep, I received a lot of emails from constituents. Not all of them agreed with me. Not all of them were favorable or respectful. But I listened and I responded respectfully, because that's what leadership is and does. As I mentioned before, since my service as state rep, I've remained engaged in the community, and I will continue to do that because I believe that we need to listen and engage with all our residents, regardless of party.
Thank you. Ms. Rabe?
Yeah, so civility without a doubt. I was just reading something that Ray Dalio posted. If it's good enough for Ray Dalio, it's good enough for me. One of the things that I did when I was on the Board of Education, I used to give the outgoing student body president Ray Dalio's book on principles. I have been involved in public service for a very long time. I have always held myself to a high regard. I listen way more than I speak. And I am accessible. I get lots of email from some people and little email from a lot of people, and responsive. One of the things too about civility, I think has been a detriment in this town and, you know, worldwide, is social media. I think that there's a lot of people in social media that would say something in social media that they probably wouldn't say to somebody's face. So I personally do not, if you want to see some pictures of my grandchildren, you're more than welcome. But I personally do not necessarily engage in a lot of the social communication channels. I much prefer to have a live conversation, and people stop me in the grocery store, they stop me in CVS, they stop me when I look my worst, and we have a conversation. And that's what I think helps with civility, because tone or emotion, all of that could be misconstrued when you're not having that live in-person conversation. So, I mean, I think that goes a real long way. I know I've said it in other debates, there is so much more that unites us than divides us, and we just need to focus on it. I was actually going through the resident survey from 2023, and it talked about what to do with taxes. And 30% said, you can raise my taxes. 30% said, no, cut my taxes. And then the rest was in the middle. And it's almost like how we are, you know, politically in the town. So we've got more that, you know, you could say 70% don't want it cut and 70% don't want it raised. So we definitely have more in common than we do that divides us.
Okay, thank you. Maya, next question.
So this question first goes to Ms. Rabin. Various town commissions have proposed energy reduction goals for the town. What concrete steps, if any, would you support in your term as selectman to help achieve some of these goals?
Well, first, we did put together an an Energy Management Advisory Committee, acronym EMAC, with some really talented individuals. We actually have a Board of Selectmen liaison to that committee. It is not myself. And that committee does come and talk to us on a regular basis and give their report and recommendations. I mean, we own a lot of property, whether it's schools, whether it's our, town-owned buildings that the town maintains. And it's just taking all those recommendations to do things in a more energy efficient manner. One of the things that we did for the 5 building committees that we are, well, the 5th is in process, is there's an EMAC representative on the building committee so that they could advise us on different ways to, reduce our carbon footprint or do things in a more energy conscious way. I know that, there was an opportunity to perhaps do geothermal at Central, but for various reasons, we're doing solar and some other energy efficient measures. But I fully respect the people on that commission. I respect their ideas. I know that our Planning and Zoning Commission has also brought in some of the ideas into some of their zone, I see somebody from P&Z, into some of their zoning regulations, or if not regulations, the questions that they will ask builders. So we're really making strides. Have we made enough strides? Probably not. Is there room for improvement? Of course. But I'm fully committed to doing anything to conserve energy, especially with our electric bills.
Yes, it might come as no surprise that when I was state representative, I got many emails from constituents who were concerned about their electric bills. Connecticut has among the highest electric rates in the country, and this affects all of us, our residents, small businesses, and town government. We need to be looking at how best to utilize renewable energy sources to save money for the town. We know that there are energy savings available. For instance, the solar panels at the Cohen Eastern Greenwich Civic Center will provide 70% of energy needs for the building and will save taxpayers money. We need to be exploring other options similar to that one, like solar canopies on other buildings in town and using renewable sources of energy wherever we can. At the BET public hearing last January, I urged the BET to allocate funding for an energy director focused on energy management and cost reductions for our municipal buildings or schools and infrastructure and other budget-reducing measures. This role is vital to creating a resilient and efficient Greenwich and will save taxpayer money. Unfortunately, the position wasn't funded and our town leadership has been silent and doesn't have a plan. The first selectman created the EMAC committee, and they've published annual reports and made recommendations, and yet nothing's been done. It's the role of our town leadership to take those recommendations and see how we can actualize them. These are pressing issues, and ignoring them won't make them go away. We need to have a strategic plan for a town, and I look forward to working with EMAC and identifying those efficiencies and bringing them to fruition.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question goes first to Ms. Raven. I believe.
No, I think
Rachel. Sorry, I apologize. Okay, so the League of Women Voters Greenwich Capital Project Study Committee recommended in 2023 that town officials create a multi-year capital plan for the town of Greenwich. Do you support this recommendation? If yes, how can this be achieved?
I do. I strongly support this recommendation. I think this is, we've had a failure of leadership in identifying and prioritizing our capital projects. We have urgent infrastructure needs that we need to address, and we have not done anything. And putting our head in the sand is not going to solve the problem. For instance, we have the Grass Island wastewater treatment facility. The DPW, our Department of Public Works, recently told the BT that they needed $60 million to harden the plant and protect it from sea level rise. The BT cut the item from the budget. Now, can you imagine if that plant shuts down because we haven't made critical investments in the infrastructure needed to protect it? It could mean that sewage will run into our Long Island Sound and potentially get backed up into oops, getting excited, into our sewer system, and potentially not be able to drink the tap water, use a showers, our dishwashers, things like that. We have so many of these projects that need to be addressed. In the League of Women Capital, the report that came out in 2023, they identified projects worth $1.6 billion. That's a lot of money that we are just, we can't just, like I said, put our head in the sand and pretend like these projects are going to go away. They're not. We need to make a plan. We need to be very strategic in prioritizing the needs of the town and for the future.
Thank you. Ms. Rabin.
I also agree with a execution of a 15-year capital plan. When I was on the Board of Education, we put our 15-year facilities plan together to prioritize how the schools should be either improved or, in the case of Central Middle School, built anew. So I fully support doing it from a townwide basis. I don't know that I would characterize it as putting our heads in the sand. We did have a robust capital improvement project before any of us took office. I think we can collaboratively work together. We seem to be in silos, and I think it's not just the Office of the First Selectman. It's administration in the school system. It's our town departments. It's BET. Having the conversations, not necessarily like March, April, May, but way before, and thinking about how do we work together in a collaborative fashion to define what needs to go in what order. I know when we had a capital plan before, we always had a dollar amount that we were going to strive for, and then people started, oh, well, my project's more important than that one, that type of thing. So we have to have a way of vetting priorities, what kind of goes first. It's not just a money issue. I mean, yes, we could raise taxes. Yes, we could borrow money. It's also an execution. Do we have the human capital to execute too? So there's a lot of factors to go into fixing, maintaining, building anew. It's not just the financial. So if all of those elements are defined in a capital plan, I 100% support that.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question.
This next question goes first to Ms. Rabin. What specifically, in your view, is the most important challenge that faces the town of Greenwich? How should the town address that challenge?
Oh, wow. So I think that one of the issues, and everybody's going to talk about it, or it's been talked about, is traffic. But there's an element of traffic that I want to address. There are mandates that are coming from Hartford that would have us building a lot more units in our town. If you look at Live, Work, Ride, something that my opponent supported when she was a state representative in Hartford, that is adding units next to public transit. The unique thing about Greenwich is we have 4 train stations. I don't think any municipality in the state of Connecticut has 4 train stations. So just think of how that would impact Riverside, Coscob, Old Greenwich, Greenwich. We have a lot of cars in town. We have about 20,000 households and 52,000 cars, which means about 2.5 cars per household. If we were to add 3,000 units, let's be conservative, 1.5 cars per unit. That would be another 4,500 cars. Our town is bigger than Manhattan. We have over 260 miles of roads, 90 miles of sidewalks. We could walk to Hartford on our sidewalks. That's how much we've got to maintain. So I think it's keeping things in a less dense environment and dealing with adding more sidewalks, adding bike paths, doing things for distracted drivers, speeding. We just approved an application to reduce the speed limit on Pork Chuck Road, something that was a tragedy in my own family, somebody that was killed on that road. So I think that's the thing that always comes up. It's in our survey. It's the thing that most affects our quality of life, and what I would like to continue to address. I had an old boss that said, it's another way of saying easy easier said than done. Says easy, done hard. So it's something that we just have to continue to, put our efforts and improve.
Can you repeat the question?
Of course. What specifically, in your view, is the most important challenge that faces the town of Greenwich? How should the town address that challenge?
Okay. Before I answer that, I just want to address the issue of housing that my opponent raised. My opponents have tried to paint me as someone who opposed local control, but that's just not true. And I have the voting record to prove it. When I was state representative, I used my power to advocate for and protect local control. And with reference to the Work, Live, Ride bill in 2024, when the bill was moving through the House and was going to pass, I worked with colleagues and local zoning experts to help craft language to protect local control and make the bill better for Greenwich. That being said, I believe that some of the challenges that we face are, as you mentioned, traffic and pedestrian safety, flood prevention, and our schools. As a 25-year Greenwich resident, I'm worried about the future of our town. I believe that we need leaders who will be proactive in planning for the future. So let's take these issues one by one. Traffic and pedestrian safety. I've knocked on a lot of doors while state rep and now while campaigning for Selectwomen. I've heard about traffic and pedestrian safety all over town. Parents want their children to be able to walk to school. People want to be able to get to or from work or travel throughout the town without getting stuck in traffic. And people want to be able to ride their bikes in their neighborhoods. I'm a triathlete, and I have seen firsthand how, while I'm running or biking, how unsafe these roads can be. While I was state representative, I took the initiative to secure $6.5 million for the stalled Glenville Corridor project. This project was languishing, and I saw a need and was proactive in working with partners at the state and local level to secure the funding to bring this project to make it a reality. I also secured funding for pedestrian safety improvements at the intersection of Route 1 with Byram and Pemberwick roads. Our town leadership has stood on the sidelines as funding for projects have been cut by the BT. Leadership should not be a spectator sport. Leadership means working with the BT, the RTM, the BOE, other committees, and state partners to see your objectives through, rather than retreating and shrugging your shoulders when progress stalls. We also need to address flood prevention. We know that 100-year storms are occurring with increasing frequency and intensity. We've seen too many neighbors suffer expensive damage and even get flooded from their homes in Glenville, Central Greenwich, Coscob, and Old Greenwich, all over town. We're a coastal community, and so we're particularly vulnerable to flooding and sea level rise. Several years ago, there was a terrible flooding in Pemberwick, and that was when leadership woke up. It should have happened before that. As a matter of fact, it shouldn't even have happened. We need to be proactive and work with our Department of Public Works to make the necessary improvements to protect our neighborhoods, people, and vital town infrastructure, like, as I said before, the Grass Island wastewater treatment plant. The BT cut requests by our DPW to harden the facility, and the Board of Selectmen said nothing. I'm worried about the town that we're leaving behind for our children. We can't keep running on autopilot. And finally, our schools. I've been a public school parent, and I'm a big supporter of our public schools. I'm angry and frustrated that the school budget was cut by $4 million and that the town leadership was silent. These cuts don't just hurt parents and students. They hurt everyone because great public schools are the foundation of a vibrant community and protect what's our biggest investment, our homes. I'll continue to work hard to make sure that our schools are properly funded and the facilities are modern so that we can retain and recruit the best educators and our kids can learn and thrive. The Selectwomen can and should be a strong voice supporting our public schools, especially during the budget development process. Town leadership was absent when they could have stood beside angry and upset parents while the BET stripped $4 million from the budget. I'm not going to be quiet when the BET runs a chainsaw through the public school budget. Our town leaders pretend there was no cut. They deny it even happened. And that's a slap in the face to residents. In one of the wealthiest towns in Connecticut, the fact that we refuse to address these important issues is a failure of leadership, and I will make them a priority.
Thank you very much.
So this is our last question for the selectmen, and it actually kind of dovetails a little bit from your responses here. So I think it's a nice segue. It says some town issues. Now it specifically highlights transportation, but it's not focused exclusively on that. Some town issues involve working with the state of Connecticut or neighboring municipalities. How would you foster intergovernmental cooperation to get results?
And I believe that's mine first.
I believe it's Ms. Khanna's.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. I've built strong relationships with our state leaders and my colleagues Hector and Steve and other representatives at the state level, and I will leverage those for the good of our town. I've also had experience working with the Connecticut Department of Transportation, Western Connecticut Council of Governments, and again, I'm going to commit to working with them on important projects, whether they are pedestrian and traffic safety projects, as I would like to see, but other projects that are priorities for the town.
So I wanted to address the Glenville corridor first, because I was on the Glenville beautification project team. So when the corridor was being proposed in 2019 and 2020, a group of independent people, we wanted to do more elements within the project, things like, nicer lights, et cetera. So we're able to raise $500,000, which is a gift to the town. And the DPW went out to bid. The bids came in higher. That money was earmarked in, I think, 2022. Bids came in higher. What else was happening in 2022? COVID. I know I had to wait 14 months for a front door. So Connecticut DOT asked them to wait another year and rebid. Bids came in higher. So therefore, the town needed more money from the state. So thank you, Rachel, for what you did from the state. But I just wanted to characterize it was a much bigger effort with a lot more people involved, and DPW is doing all the legwork for that particular project, which I am much appreciative for. In my role currently, I have been serving as the CEO, which stands for Chief Elected Officer to Western Connecticut Council of Governments. I'm in my 6th year. I meet monthly with 16 other CEOs from our neighboring municipalities, and we share ideas, we brainstorm, we vote on each other's grants that are happening in each location. It happens at Westcog first. I'm also on the board of CIRMA, which is the Connecticut Inter-Risk Management Association. It's where most of the municipalities get their workman's compensation, some of their other insurance. So that helps me understand what's going on in neighboring towns. And I have the benefit of having Fred Camillo be my running mate. Fred served for 11 years in the legislation. I think he forgot more about how to serve in the legislation than some of our current leaders today.
Okay, thank you very much. I had highlighted that I have 20 questions, but it's very heavily weighted for the first selectman. So we're now at the point now where we can offer our closing remarks. Ms. Khanna, pursuant to the hat numbering, you get to go first again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters and to all of you for participating this evening. Thank you to Lauren and Anthony and Maya. I'm running for Select Women because I love Greenwich and I love helping people. When I served as state representative, I met with constituents on a regular basis. Early on during my term, I heard from a local firefighter about how job-related exposures were putting them at risk for getting sick and that they were struggling to get disability coverage for exposure-related cancer diagnoses. That just seemed wrong. So I made it my mission to make it right and show them that we have their back as they have ours. And I'm proud to say that I worked with colleagues on both sides of the aisle to create a firefighters cancer fund, and it's a step toward better care for our first responders. I worked hard in other ways too to deliver for my district. I secured more than $100 million in funding for school construction, traffic and pedestrian safety projects, and to secure funding for nonprofits in the district. I've delivered results for Greenwich and will continue to do so if elected selectwoman. As a former small business owner, I know what it means to listen to customers. And as state representative, I have a record of working collaboratively across the aisle and even breaking with my party and voting for what's in the best interest of my constituents. Some of you may know that I'm a triathlete. That requires discipline and perseverance to train almost every single day, rain or shine, hot or cold. And it also requires a healthy respect for expert advice in order to succeed. I understand what it means to do the work and put in the time. That's how I approach public service and how I'll lead. I love Greenwich, just like all of you, but I know that we can do better. We've seen enough of plan as you go. It's time to be proactive in planning for the future of the town. It's time for fresh voices. I'm a public servant at heart, and serving you through my work with school PTAs, nonprofits, on the RTM, and a state representative has been a great honor, and I humbly ask for your vote to be your selectwoman. Thank you. Just made it.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rabin.
And don't forget, this is the beginning at the end. Thank you, League of Women Voters, our moderators, and to everyone here tonight. Greenwich is a community I love and dedicated my life to serving it. I was raised by a single mom who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. And like many families today in Greenwich, we availed ourselves to the reduced lunch program. My father drove a transit bus. My stepfather was a career fireman. Service and responsibility were a part of my life from the very beginning. And since 1995, when my oldest went into kindergarten, I have served on our town boards, all levels of the PTA, commissions, Human Services Commission, RTM for 4 years, and the Board of Education for 4 years. I've been honored to receive awards from the PTA, the New Lebanon Immeasurable Service Award, the inaugural PTA Council Essence Award, and most recently, the YWCA Women Who Inspire Award. But what matters most to me is the opportunity to give back to the community that has given so much to me. In addition to my service, I have spent 40 years in the technology industry, leading high-performing teams in Fortune 500 companies. And that experience has taught me how to manage complex challenges and respond under pressure, even when I mixed up my opening and closing statements. Skills that I have used and thought to be essential, especially proven and hardened in coming into office during COVID. No manual, no roadmap, no instruction, and we had to navigate through it. And I thank the colleagues that I served with me to make that happen. I believe my life's journey, being a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a professional, and a public servant, has prepared me for this role. And with your support on November 4th, I will continue providing steady and practical leadership as a Taurus and keep Greenwich safe, strong, and financially sound.
Okay, thank you very much.
Congratulations, Warren. Great job.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking you could in your opening.
All right. So for this round, we have our 2 candidates for first selectman. To my immediate left is Fred Camillo. A little bit further away to my left is Anthony Moore. We have, same as the prior debate, we previously determined order. So Mr. Camillo is going to lead us off with the opening statement. He's also going to lead us off with the first question when that time comes. So Mr. Camillo, whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for arranging this, and for everybody here tonight. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Anthony. And being a full-blooded Italian, I'm used to being surrounded by Anthonys. I was born and raised here. This is my home. I've volunteered here since I was a kid. First in athletics, coaching high school baseball and summer baseball, and then serving on boards, committees, commissions, task forces, both here and on the state level. I also served on the RTM for 3.5 terms and 11 years as a state representative, rising to assistant minority leader. In the last 6 years as your first selectman, which has been an honor of my lifetime. Every year here, I always quote Coach Bill Parcells, and I do so because as a candidate, you have 3 things. You have your record, your vision, and your word. And as Coach Parcells says, you are what your record says you are. And in the last 6 years, Greenwich has rose in the rankings to where in one ranking we were 87th as far as the safest town in the country. One had us at 10. And most recently, Niche Rankings had us as an A+ place to live. And already? Oh my God! All right, I was just getting started, but I guess hopefully I'll mix it in there with the questions. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you very
All
much.
yours, Anthony.
No worries.
Mr. Moore.
Sorry.
You got me now? Well, first of all, thank you, Fred. Thank you, Anthony. Thanks to all of you for recognizing that this is an important civic moment. I want to say for, purposes of recognizing who we all are, is that I know at least one person in this audience who's going to vote for me regardless of how I do tonight. It's my wife. She's sitting right over there, Karen Moore. But I'm Anthony Moore. Karen Moore is my wife. I'm a father of 2 adult children, and I also am a neighbor and a friend. We live in central Greenwich, and we are delighted to be here tonight. I spent decades as a local news reporter, listening to real people every day, telling their stories. Later, I managed software product development in major companies. Now I'm asking for your vote as first selectman because we're at a crossroads. If we want to preserve our low mill rate and maintain our quality of life, we need to usher in a new era of fiscal responsibility and leadership in Greenwich, and I hope to talk about that with you and with my opponent tonight. Thank you.
Thank you both. So, Mr. Camillo, as I said, the first question begins with you.
Sure.
There's already been some discussion tonight about a topic that is on the minds of many. How will you reduce the political division we see in our town? What will you do to make in the town of Greenwich and the Greenwich town government to make it more collaborative?
It's a great question. So, I signed a civility pledge, but that's just words and that's just a signature, but I meant it. I established an anti-Semitism and an anti-hate commission that has met several times. I've also appointed people in the opposite party. Even my first appointment was somebody named Howard Richmond, who the position could have gone to a Democrat, but I thought he was the right choice. And I think by leading by example is the way to do it. Talk is good if you mean it, but you really have to back it up. People know me. As I said, I don't come at the people every year or every 2 years during an election. I come from them. This is my community. These are the people that see me all the time in delis, diners, walking dogs in the park, on the beach, at the gym. You have to lead by, I served 11 years in Hartford and 6 years here and 3.5 terms on RTM. I think if you're not civil, people would not trust you. And I think you have to lead by example. And it's tough today. I think we all agree. We see the violence and people getting shot just for their thoughts. It's bizarre that we're even seeing that in this country. And we can do better and we have to do better. But it starts with us. And I think that, you'll see, I think, a very civil debate here tonight between Anthony and myself. And I just think it's something that you have to do every single day.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I would second that. I think the role of the first selectman should be to model a politics that fosters collaboration, that leads us through a constructive dialogue, and that bridges the gaps. That is what you're asking us to do as first selectman. We are, after all, the executive authority for everyone in town, not just one party. I also think we need to create space for Greenwich residents to share their experiences and their perspectives respectfully. And that can be in forums like this, but in just day-to-day life as well. Even if we differ, we should be able to do it respectfully. The good news is that Greenwich has a civic and governmental life almost second to none. And I've lived around in a few places in my career. You can't throw a rock and not hit either a civic volunteer or a politician in town. We've got 3 members of the RTM and my own block as it is. And we've had a broad coalition in the RTM, which has, been able to work in a nonpartisan way in recent years. But, I also am concerned, as my opponent is. I'm concerned that things have gotten sharper, elbows have gotten sharper, and to be honest, the most partisan thing that happened this year was that cut to the schools. That took place after months of hearings, in the dead of night, without any dialogue, any consultation, and no due diligence. I mean, it was a shock. And we know it was because 1,500 people wrote letters to the BET asking for them to change their minds. We had a request to delay this, to negotiate it down. None of that happened. It was not bipartisanship. It was one-party rule. And as for selectmen, I can tell you that I will step in way earlier, and I will lead from the front. I will work with my party in the BET, my caucus, and even the other party so that we can settle these things, or at least negotiate these things in a collaborative way early on. Because, as you know, in this town, it did leave a bitter taste, and we're still dealing with it now.
Sure, yes, I'd like to add into this. So we're talking about civility. I mean, that was just a policy decision, but we heard my opponent's running mate make some misstatements, quite a few the first go around, and the leadership stayed silent. Well, all you have to do is Google it and see that actually I did not stay silent, and I actually did step in. But I just want to correct something. There was not a $4 million cut. They requested $12.1 million and they received $8.1 million. That's a 3% increase. Most of the 11 departments under me stick to a 2 or 3%. And then we found out later that there was a law that allowed them to carry over a surplus, which reached $2.5 million on top of that $8.1 million. That's not being reported in the press, and the questions keep coming back. You ask something, an ill-informed question, you're going to get an ill-informed answer. There was no cut. Now, again, we could have argued about the $4 million, which I did. And in fact, if my compromise was accepted, and there were some people that on both sides that agreed, but I also had conversations with some of the Democrats on the BET who absolutely told me there could have been a little bit of a cut there. So there was agreement, and there was absolutely there was a dialogue there. But we were misled about this $2.5 million that was carrying over. I did not know about that. Many people did not know about that. So again, that would have been $10.5 million right there, or 6. Plus, again, if they took my compromise, they would have ended up with more money. But the whole point is, questions are a good thing. I will agree that it was done late, and that communication is key. And that's why the new BET coming in, I supported the people there because they're going to work well together with the Democrats. So the Democrats and the Republicans on the BET, I'm very confident in this coming term are going to they'll agree to disagree, and they should, but they're going to do so, I think, in a much more civil manner and much more open with the dialogue. We have to do better because you can't pit people against people on something like that, but we also have to make sure the questions are correct and that people know that, that was not a cut.
Well, and I'll just follow up, if I may, just briefly, because, I agree in spirit with what the first selectman is saying. We need to be doing this stuff earlier, and we'd be more collaborative. As first selectman, I would make sure that we would. Just secondly, I'm just an astrophysics major, but I can tell you that when a budget is set by a school board on a bipartisan vote and it's sent over to a BET and the BET removes numbers from it, that's a cut. And the teachers know it was a cut because they got cut. And, I don't think we need to debate that there were effects that were deleterious regardless of how you call it.
I could keep going. I know we want to go other, but again, by state law, you're not allowed to cut. You're not allowed to cut the budget from the previous year. There was not a cut. Okay, but we agree. I think we agree in principle here that that communication was terrible, and that has to be. I've spoken to members coming onto the BET, and they've all pledged to make sure that that does not happen again.
Okay, thank you very much. Maya, would you like to offer the next question?
Of course. This one goes first to Mr. Moore. We received a number of questions that relate to local traffic, including on Route 1 and North Street. How do you plan to improve the traffic conditions in our town?
Well, as Fred would say, this one should be a layup for me because I'm the chairman of the Transportation Committee. So first of all, let me just say that traffic in town is, as I think we all know, it's one of the top issues. We had a survey in 2023, the Biennial Town Survey, and the number one top issue was schools and supporting the schools. And the other number one top issue was traffic, pedestrian safety, bicycles, sidewalks, that whole bucket of stuff. And when we go, I've knocked on 4,000 doors now since I announced my candidacy. And when I've gone out there, unaided, that is, probably the number two answer that I get. Well, yeah. And then there's not much you can do about it. And roads are small, really, there's not much we can do. But you know what? There is something we can do. 15 years ago, we got rid of the position of traffic engineers, superintendent of traffic engineering, and we saved his $106,000 a year salary the next year. And you know what? We are now paying the price because traffic's changed. And you know what that job's responsibility was? It was to handle the network of traffic. It's not like fixing the intersections. It's like, how do we get safe, easy travel around town? It's a traffic designer in a sense. And we don't have anybody who does it right now. Folded under the Highway and Traffic Division. Those guys are great at milling and paving roads. And by golly, we have the most beautiful roads, don't we? You can slide down those roads on a nice day. And it's the type of thing that if we brought back, we would be like the rest of our neighbors. This position is in all the other neighboring communities from one side of Greenwich to the other, but we don't have it. You might ask yourself, what could that person do? Well, they might have recognized that stop and go confusion we're seeing on Greenwich Ave, now that we've, removed the cops and we've changed the architecture a little, it's confusing. And, I know my opponent agrees that we got to do something there. It's the kind of role that, could address how we adjust traffic for 3 bridge projects that are coming up. We know we've got 3 bridge projects. It's going to be Carmageddon on Route 1 unless we do something. And that's what you have a $106,000 a year guy being paid for, at least. And that was like $2016 or something. And it's the kind of role that could develop the safe routes for schools that we'd all like to see, because if we could get safe routes to schools where parents don't have to drive their kids, it's the kind of role that could handle things like, how do we deal with the buses on Hillside when this GHS is trying to, get kids in and out of school. So that's what I really plan to do. Rachel and I, we're going to bring that focus back on traffic as a mission. I know my opponent's going to talk about the good things he's done. That's a start, and I appreciate him having started some of this, but we got to go a lot further.
Thank you. And I thank you for always supporting, I think, good initiatives. In 1969, it's always, the stat always stays with me. There was 14,000 registered cars here, and it was about 59,000 people. Today, there's 64,000 people here and 53,000 cars. And that doesn't include all the people that are working here now, a lot more than in 1969. So it seems like there's 400,000 people here. And it's like this all over the place. I know whenever you go to a nice place, right, there's going to be traffic. And so obviously we can't bar people, and mandate that they get rid of their cars. I know where you came from, California, right? That's my brother lived out there. That's brutal, and it's frustrating, and you lose a lot of productivity when I used to go to Hartford, it used to be maybe an hour and 10 minutes. It's now about 2 hours when I did that trek up there now. What I've done is we meet all the time. I meet probably weekly with several of the department heads. We've reached out a couple of years ago to DOT, and we asked for the smart technology. And we got it. We were the first one in the state to get it at exit 3. That has increased and really improved the traffic flow. It does not eliminate traffic. We can't do that. But we can, as my opponent said, work at mitigating the congestion by looking at new and improved technology. Then I reached out to DOT and I said, hey, there's a couple trouble spots on the Post Road. Well, they were going back and forth. We engaged them, and they did better than that. They came back and said, we're going to go from the Port Chester line to the Stanford line. All the Post Road's going to get the smart technology within the next 12 months. Now, again, that's the DOT timeline. I hate giving timelines because sometimes they're a little slow, but that is really good. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? A traffic engineer, and you're referring to Gara Garabedian, who was let go by a previous selectman. I'm always open to seeing if there's a position there open, and I put some in the budget sometimes where I think that would help save money and increase productivity and efficiency. But we have some damn good engineers, and they're actually doing their job that they're supposed to do right now. But there's a lot more work. We've put millions of dollars in infrastructure, local infrastructure, to increase and improve sidewalks, crosswalks, intersections. They're not always popular, but my opponent and I agree. We're all on the same page with pedestrian safety. We're active, right? And I want people to be active in this community. I just want them to do so safely. It's, as we've always talked about, Greenwich has always tended to be a car-centric town, right? A lot of places around the globe and the country are more pedestrian-centric. So we're trying to have a measured approach there so that when people do go on Greenwich Avenue, as we're trying to get them to be more pedestrian-centric and more, friendly for people walking and hiking, we also want to make sure those people who may be disabled, who need to be close to a store or a restaurant or pharmacy, that we added these 15-minute parking spaces. We've added about 4 in the last few years. We've also increased the space parking by a couple hundred by getting the meter feeders off the avenue. It's still not enough. But that's a good thing, is that there's people going there, and that a lot of towns would like to have that problem. But we have to keep working at it. And again, our DPW is doing a really good job right now reaching out. And we're looking all over the country. I reach out to National Conference of State Legislatures, as well as I'm on the board of Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, to see who's doing something that maybe we're not doing. And is there somewhere in the country that, and they do, they come back and they give us things. Sometimes, as my opponent said, it may not fit here, but we try. We may even do something, a pilot program with some traffic mitigation efforts in Old Greenwich, which seems to be one part of town that seems to be a lot more open to pedestrian-friendly activities.
We could talk about this all night.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next one then.
We'll move on to the next one.
All right, thank you very much. Again, this question leads up from Mr. Camillo. We kind of, I feel like we've covered this next question, so I'm gonna jump to question 4. It was all about how we're gonna deal with the traffic control and the resident frustration with that. So we'll go to the next one. Several plans have been proposed to renovate and repurpose the Havemeyer building, currently home to the Board of Education. How should the town fund the Board of Education's new location?
I'm glad you asked. This is something that has bothered me since I was a kid. I mean, why are we housing a government entity in one of the most expensive pieces of property in the town, in the middle of your commercial district? My father went to that school in the 1930s. It's fallen apart. There was a beautiful auditorium in there. They've chopped it up. I took people in there right before the pandemic, including one guy who's well-known who said he wanted to do a public-private partnership and bring his business there and open it up, half of it, to the town, because it would have worked. And he said it would have been, he's done this all over the world, $50 million to fix. That's our building. So why wouldn't we do a public-private partnership open that building up to the public? Because right now, I put together 2 task forces. They've done a great job. Andy Deuce was the chairman of it, former BET member. And right now, you can't go in there unless you have business with the BOE. And the building is falling apart. So finally, there's been 2 other, in the last 25 years, attempts to get them out of there, and the then administration didn't want to move. This administration has signaled they want to move for many reasons, so it's 2-pronged. We're trying to find them a space, and we've looked at several, and we're continuing to look at it. But the second task force I put together had a bunch of respondents, and the one they liked, again, it wasn't me. I backed off of it because I said people say it was Freddie's task force. So what they did is they found one that would have the top one, and it's not a done deal, which they would do a hotel, but they would also, we're asking them to fix up the auditorium for the public, some conference spaces, a rooftop bar and restaurant. Isn't that better? Because at 4 o'clock, that place goes silent. It goes silent in the middle of your commercial district. Greenwich Avenue, which is one of the most active places now, especially since outdoor dining in the last 6 years, it's become, right, Lauren? It's become vibrant. We even did a survey, and it came back like 85% liked it. So why not continue the progress there? And whether that proposal goes through or another one, the building, it's going to fail. And if we do nothing, it's going to go back on the taxpayers. And for what? What are we going to stick the Board of Ed in there again? It's 50,000 square feet. They need about 19,000 square feet. When you tell people this, they say, why are they even there? It's been that way for decades, but it's time. It is time. So I'm just grateful to the two task forces that we put together. It was bipartisan. We had Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated, people with the skill sets and the backgrounds in construction, management, law, real estate. So I'm really excited that, sometime in the next 2 years, we're going to move forward with something there. But again, we're looking at places for the Board of Ed so they can go in there. So part of some of the people on the Democratic side did not want them to move out because they said, well, we're going to be paying rent. Okay, it was a fair point. So we're trying to figure out a way to get them into a town building. And if there was some rent that we had to pay briefly, that it's not counted against their budget. Okay, legitimate questions that were asked, and certainly we don't want to certainly do anything that's going to cost the town money. But it is going to cost the town a lot of money if we don't do something soon. And again, what an opportunity. What a great opportunity for that building to be fixed up and have people going back in there. It's something that, when I go all around the town and I hear from everybody, right? Complaints, whatever. It's overwhelming. And again, I get lots of complaints about anything. I give my cell number out, they call. But overall, it's not even close that people say you should do something there. But everybody, I see a friend in the audience there, she agrees with that, but she said, I don't like that proposal. Well, it's okay, but that's what we're gathering information. And Andy Duce has done a great job with that task force, as Matt Deschamps has done a great job with the rink, which is another proposal thing that we're going to move forward on, something that we've been debating since 1975, and we're going to get it done, just like we got the Civic Center done, and that was a 40-year debate. And I pledged to get it done in 2019, and we got it done with a public-private partnership. We'll do that at this one, too.
Wow. Well, the Havemeyer Building is emblematic of so much that we could do in a different way in Greenwich. This is a story of vision. This is a story of leadership. This is a story of, sadly, decay. It's clear that we let things molder and fall apart, and then it becomes an emergency. We don't fix things before they break in Greenwich, and that's got to stop. And the way you can do that is by planning ahead. You can fix things at an earlier time, and it will cost a lot less. The Havemeyer Building is believed to be about a $28 million fix-up job, and I can understand why the first selectman wants to get him off the books. But as first selectman, I'm not going to sell off our town assets for parts. I'm going to see about making the best use of things. And as we know, this is a prime piece of real estate in the center of Greenwich, and what's the best way to handle it? What I'm going to do as first selectman is I am not going to have a secret RFP process sent out to business people and then have them come back and then ask a secret group of citizens to decide which thing to build, which is what happened in this process. We ended up with a hotel is the idea, which when we want to bring the Havemeyer Building back to the people, I think we want to bring it to the people who live in Greenwich, not to the people who don't live in Greenwich. So fixing things first so it doesn't become an emergency, that's number one. And we can talk about that in terms of the Central Middle School. We heard earlier about what happened there. Again, we just let it sit there for 75 years, and then we didn't want to know that the walls might be crumbling. And then suddenly we had to evacuate it. Havemeyer Building, same thing. Why don't we make that downtown area an entertainment and revenue generating thing for the people who live in Greenwich. And I know there's ideas out there, arts and entertainment venue. You know, the old timers who talk to me at the doors say, you used to be able to go bowling in downtown Greenwich. There used to be a grocery store in downtown Greenwich. You could go to cinema, as we know, until recently. There's all those opportunities are sitting there. And if we think creatively and we talk to the community first, if I lead a discussion as the first selectman, where we have a process that is public and open, after we come to some kind of understanding of what the opportunities are, then maybe we can send out an RFP to the business people and find out how they're going to help us finance it in a way that makes sense for us in Greenwich. So that's my sense of a lot of what's going on here. Everything from the rink, as Fred mentioned, to the Havemeyer building, to our schools, which are, you know, some of which are 100 years old.
Can I respond? Thank you. If that was a secret process, then I would not be good in espionage. There was very open, and there's people sitting in this room that were probably on that task force. I look at all the task forces we've done. We did one for the Greenwich Plaza, which saved the town $600 million. I see David Weisbrod's on that. He's sitting here. He was on that. That was a bipartisan committee put together of people with real estate, government, commercial real estate, law, legal, you name it. And there was a difference of opinion in it. But sometimes, you know, God bless you. God bless you. People may not like what comes out of it, and they'll say, well, that was a backroom deal. Well, there's somebody sitting here who FOI'd that process. And I had to reply several times, which would get FOI'd like every 10 minutes. But it's out there, and they haven't found anything secretive, but they'll do it again and again and again. And sometimes, unfortunately, what is a really good law, a clean law, something that sheds light on things, sometimes it's used for political purposes. And I can tell you, if the people here knew how much money and time is spent on that type of stuff every week, where department heads have to run up to Hartford, you'd be appalled what it costs us. And again, not one thing has come out of dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of those types of requests. So there's nothing secretive. In fact, there was a public hearing on there. And again, we may come back and do something totally different, but the reason why, if it was secret, I would have got 6 of my best friends, we would have went in the corner, we would have presented something. That's ridiculous. No one ever does that stuff. And we have been so transparent as far as everything we've done. After COVID, we could have just said, stop with the Zoom with our Board of Selectmen meeting. No, we want people to Zoom in and to be able to see it. We do a weekly e-blast that goes out to tens of thousands of people. We update social media every single day. Transparency is key to government. People aren't going to, if you're first selectman or your governor or your president, the more you make decisions, right, the more you're going to aggravate people. At some point, you're going to get over 50% that don't like you anymore. But you have to make decisions, but you have to do it coming from the people, not coming down from the top. And that we've done that all the time. And something will get done there, and it's going to be something that people are going to look back and say, what took them so long to do that?
Right. Yeah, I'm one of those. But what I'll say is that, look, all I know is that it was a surprise to just about everybody in town that it was going to be a hotel and not, hey, here's some ideas for what we could do. And I think that's the thing that I would do differently. I would start it in a different manner, and I would try to be much more, aggressively collaborative, because I understand the first selectman saying that, hey, he tried to get the word out. I'm going to get just the word out better, I think. That's my point of view.
Okay, but we put out an RFP to get respondents, right? I can't give the responses for them. That's what came back. And I said, I don't want any part of it, because I'm going to say, well, Freddie Camillo is the one that's pushing that. And the task force for the rink, I did not want to be on it. I did not want to pick the chairman. They did that themselves, because it comes from them. You may not like what they've decided, but it came from the people. Your fellow residents taxpayers, volunteers. That's where it came from. It wasn't me, and it wasn't secretive.
Yeah, and I'd recommend doing something that we know as a design charrette, which is done in municipalities all over the world, where you put out design ideas and people come back with wild and crazy ideas and some great ideas, some not. You don't have to go to that sort of RFP secretive business process. You can do the design charrette first and get people imagining what it could be. And I think we all agree, including Fred, that Greenwich Avenue has a great opportunity with the Havemeyer building. We're just not going to kick the Board of Education out and then tack another $3 million, what is it, $3 million a year in rent on them. We can't do that either. So this is all moving parts, but I feel there's a way to do it that will satisfy all of us, and we can get it done quickly.
We agree.
All right, thank you very much. Just looking at times here so I can get a sense. Okay. So, gentlemen, if I could just remind you, just to try to keep them somewhere in the neighborhood of each other lengthwise. Maya, next question.
Actually, that's kind of funny that I'm talking less than Fred, because I always talk the most. I apologize for that.
Well, they say less is more, but maybe more is less.
Didn't know we had comedians here tonight.
I won't
All
get
right.
my day job.
I think this next one goes to Mr. Moore. So, accessing town services can be frustrating, confusing, and inefficient. Each department seems to have different hours, different processes, different software, and different payment processes. Much of it outdated and requiring a phone call or email to complete successfully. Are there efficiencies for the town of Greenwich to move to similar business hours regardless of departments, upgrading the town website to be more efficient and user-friendly, and requiring departments to create a roadmap for 100% electronic processes, internal and external?
Sounds like you just solved the problem for us right there. Yes, those opportunities are out there, and I think everybody knows that we are very 20th century here in Town Hall. And the good news is that on a unified slate of row A, we have some people who are expert at doing that kind of a thing, both in terms of our tax collector candidate, Holly Bayram, and our town clerk candidate, Megan McCrary, both of whom have expertise in software development, product management, and making things work in that way. It is not simple. I will put that out myself as someone who has spent time in product management in Silicon Valley myself. It's not simple, but it can be done. You should not have 3 different passwords to do 3 different things. Get a dog license, try and get a parking permit, try and get a beach pass. Why can't we go all electronic on our beach passes? Why do you have to carry them around? All of these things are doable. It's a matter of buckling down and doing them. And the last thing is, don't you hate finding a form that's a PDF that you have to print out and then write the stuff on and then walk it back or drive it back to town hall? We got to change that, and we will if you elect us.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the right answer, and I'm happy to announce that in the first quarter of 2026, I've asked for, the last couple of years, and it got slowed down a little bit, but it's going to happen in the first quarter, where when you're going for building permits, it's all going to be online. So if you have something you're going on a building or a house a project, you'll be able to see exactly what you need and what's been checked off. And that's going to be helpful. I know Anthony had mentioned when you announced, one of the first things you said was about those dog licenses, and being the dog guy, I was happy that Jackie Buckins announced a couple of days later that it was online. So
I credit myself for having made that happen. Right?
So, we thank Jackie for getting that done. And, you talk about the other people in Town Hall. We absolutely, with AI coming, it's going to absolutely increase efficiencies. But if you look at someone like Heather Smeriglio, her collection rate is close to 100%. So even without being that modernization, that's pretty damn good, right? So we have some great elected officials, and we have a terrific team here at Town Hall. Tom Klein, our IT director, is terrific. And he's talked about a lot of these things. We have a monthly meeting with our department heads. I also meet separately with them. A lot of these things we're talking about, probably some of them I can't talk about too much tonight, but we're on to that. And certainly we know, by being more efficient online, it does a lot of things. Not only does it allow efficiencies for you and make it easier for the people dealing with the town processes, it also, we have 600 to 700 people coming in here every day. And lessening the foot traffic is one of my goals because, God forbid, as we talk about public safety and building security, we're working on hardening the targets with our emergency operations director, Joe Lasella, who is the best in the state, one of the best hires we've done in the last few years. And with police, we're looking at hardening the targets. We're going to start doing that in the next few months here, little by little. But having less people accessing the building will help. So it's certainly something that it's not even a choice. You have to do it. But Greenwich is, I always say, we're number one in all the categories you want to be or close to it. But it doesn't mean we're perfect, right? Nobody is. And that's why we do what we do. But I can tell you this staff, this team at Town Hall, and a lot of our elected officials are our top shelf, and we are going to get there quickly.
Thank you very much. The next question, we've touched on this a little bit, particularly in the question about the Havemeyer building, but I think the second part of the question wasn't really spoken much about, so that's why I'm going to share this one. The first part of the question is, what is your position on public-private partnerships? But the second part asks, to what extent should the availability of public-private partnerships that fund some of the town's capital projects dictate how these projects are calendared and prioritized? Mr. Camillo, you lead us off.
Thank you. So in 2019, one of my top pledges was to do public-private partnerships. The town had done them in the past, but wasn't really looked upon favorably. And every time I go down south, I'd see some of these towns, and they were beautiful buildings, and they were done really tastefully with private names on it, and that gives the taxpayers relief. So when I got elected, one of the first calls I got was from Mrs. Alex Cohen, and she said, "Can you come and meet me, because we loved what you said." And they had offered to give the town money for the Civic Center a few years before, and the town said, "Well, we're not ready, but we'll put it in a fund, and we'll let you know when we have a project." And she said, "No, I want that project." And so I said, I pledged her, we will get it done. And so we've absolutely, and we also, just so you know, there were some people that didn't like that and said, well, if you take private money and it's going to be for personal use and other people's going to be excluded. No. And I went to Ms. Cohen, I said, my opponent said that, are you going to put conditions on this? And she said, yeah, one condition. I said, what? She goes, build it. That's it. And so, but we have a policy. We have a naming policy. We have a public-private partnership policy. There's no fixed number on it, obviously, because if you say you want to, it's got to be $10 million, and that could be, 80% of something. You don't want to, preclude somebody from actually offering. I can tell you that we have a significant offer, and possibly 2 for the rink, and 2 and possibly 3 for Roger Sherman Baldwin Park, which had an RFP I put out a few years ago. It's just now finding the money to relocate the Parks Department operations right next to the teen center. We've identified the transfer station as the place for that to go, but that price tag's about $15 million, and that's the snag there. So I put in the budget last year money for a consultant. Thank you, BET, for doing that. A consultant for grants. And so we spoke, Kate Bush, the town administrator, and I spoke with the person, we're giving them direction about what to look for in grants, and that's one of them. And so we'll be talking with that person in the weeks and months ahead to hopefully get these projects pushed forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moore.
Well, so I will always pursue private donations, public-private partnerships, private money to build great projects. I will always pursue that. We have so many generous and fortunate residents here who could give back to the town in many ways. But I'm concerned because, I mean, I think what you're hearing is that we've started to outsource our planning and prioritization of that policy to the extent that we have one. It's a little like letting your brother-in-law plan your family vacation. You're going to end up at the Great Ball of Twine where nobody wanted to go. We need to have our planning process be ours as a community, not outsourced to public-private partnerships. And in truth, we could have built the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center earlier, much earlier, decades earlier, had we gotten the gumption up to do it ourselves. It would have cost a lot less because we wouldn't have had to pay we could have gotten money for practically nothing. And I bet we could have also got a wonderful donation for the naming rights in the end. Instead, we waited until a time where, suddenly prices are going up for everything from construction materials, to money itself. So, public-private partnerships, naming rights, all of this should come after a planning process. And that brings up another really important thing where we're missing out here in this town, which is a capital planning process. I know that my opponent felt that a 15-year capital planning process was not effective and couldn't be nailed down enough, so, that's not something we do much anymore. And so now we're doing 5-year plans. But 5-year plans are not actually happening right now, even in the capital planning process. We're seeing our most recent session term, last 2 terms of the BET, our strategic capital budget being erased of plans that we know we're going to have to do, and we've talked about some of them. Everything from crucial flood, drainage improvements to the rink are getting erased not from this year's capital plans, but from future capital plans. I know the rink is going to need to be done, and I also know it's not going to cost us $0, but right now that's the number in our future capital plans. Without having a strategic prioritization process to develop your town's, future plans and future projects, you're kind of spitballing as to what you're going to do next. And that's what's happened here, both in terms of our town's finance board, the BET, and in terms of the office of the first selectman. I'm going to bring back a process that a predecessor of ours used, Jim Lash. And this was a planning process that used a rubric to prioritize how we develop our different projects, what's the importance of them, what's the order they should be done, and it may change time. And there's some people in the audience here who were, responsible for being members of a committee on this from RTM and from other parts of our town government to put this kind of a capital planning process together. We don't have that today. We don't really know what's ahead because we're starting to erase the stuff. I'm going to take the lead, along with Rachel and along with a unified group of members of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, and I'm going to help plan your tax dollars in a positive, transparent, open way, and you can decide what we're going to build when.
Well, having some experience here and been around for a while, I could tell you what my opponent's talking about is something that as far back as Rebecca Breed, a former first select woman, a good friend, once said when she was running for re-election in 1983. She did an article, I think it was with the New York Times, and she was saying, we're badly in need of charter reform here because as a first selectman candidate, I ran on an agenda, and the people voted for it. And then the most powerful board there is the BET, and they can just decimate that. And people say, well, why, Fred, what's going on with the waterfront property? I know you're doing all this other stuff, but what about that? And really, if my opponent is sincere about that, and I think we agree on principle where you were going with that, is you need charter reform because you don't have that power. We have a very decentralized form of government. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to me. I do support the low mill rate because you never want to get rid of that. The Greenwich has always had that. It helps people stay here on fixed incomes, but it's also a draw for people coming here. But you got to get projects done. You have to stay on top of the infrastructure. That's why we fight for grants. That's why we fight for public-private partnerships, to give the taxpayers relief. So absolutely. And, the old CIP process that Anthony mentioned, it was good, but it was also flawed. By the out years 6, 7, 8, sometimes it's outdated. And so it's kind of a waste of time. Well, also we had, when they were doing that CIP process under the predecessor you mentioned, the department heads would come there, and they were on that committee, but they would all say they're all there for their own projects. So you're not going to get Joe Siciliano from Parks and Recreation saying, well, here's my priority. Yeah, but I like Jim Michaels better. You could do his. We're okay. We don't need to do Parks and Rec this year. Never happened. So that was a flawed process. It was a good idea when it started, but there had some kinks in it. So the 5-year process has worked much better. Ben Branyan and I came to that conclusion early on in our term. But there's always room for improvement. Again, I'm not pushing for charter change right now. That's a big, big lift. We have enough on our plate right now, but it's tough when you have a BET that may have a different mindset. I am a lot more confident in the BET coming forward, both Democrats and Republicans in the coming term, that things will get pushed forward. But relax, not going crazy on that mill rate. We'll get things done, but we still want to keep a mill rate affordable for all those people. Like where I came from, my background, we were very blue-collar, middle-class. My grandmother was in Armstrong Court in public housing. So I don't come at it from, saying one thing and being, talking out of both sides of my mouth. I actually come from a blue-collar background. So it's it's something I care about. I work really hard with the Greenwich communities, which is another thing. I hope we could get to talk about that and the great strides we made of adding 15% affordable units in town in just 6 years. So there's a lot going on here, but again, if you really want to, say I'm going to change everything, me and my running mate, that's not going to happen, but you can be a more effective advocate. And if somebody wants to take up a little bit of a charter change, I'll absolutely 100% be there. Charter changes are tough, but I'm absolutely open to doing that if that's what the people want.
So let me make a couple things clear, and I appreciate the remarks. We all love our low mill rate. It's the lowest in the state, with the exception of Salisbury, right? Which is like, a gnat on the back of the backside of somebody. So it doesn't really count. And by the way, we on this side of the aisle, we tend to get tagged with being tax and spend. But the truth is, the one time that the Democrats were in charge of the BET in the last 100 years, we kept the mill rate at an average of 1.4% over 2 years, which is lower than the Republicans. But let's just remember that we all are here. It's a community value for our low tax rate. That said, we also have to remember that the planning process is just that, planning and prioritization. It doesn't cost money to plan and prioritize. It's the smart thing to do. It's the fiscally responsible thing to do. It's the prudent thing to do. And we're definitely going to do that in my administration. And you don't need to have charter change to use the secret power of the first selectman's office. It's the bully pulpit. This role has the ability, just by being the first selectman, to convene people, to get groups together, and to negotiate collaboratively. And we're going to do that. Can't guarantee success, but, that's part of why the first selectman is here. And so I intend to use that to its fullest extent going forward.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And again, let's pay attention to the time, just to, like I said, to try to keep it as close as possible. Maya, if you'd like to offer the next question, I believe Mr. Moore leads us off for this one.
Of course. So this next question is, what will you contribute to the effective function between the BOE and the BET?
That's an easy one. I will never sue the school board. I just won't do that. I don't wake up in the morning as a public official here in town and say, let's sue ourselves. I'm not going to do that. You just don't do that, right? This is another opportunity to negotiate and collaborate and work together. It was not a good idea to hit the lawsuit button first. We needed to work this out. And, when you think about the details of this, yeah, some people are saying, well, politically, there was this thing going on or that thing going on. Everybody's got a different story about who was trying to do what to whom. But the truth is, the Democrats on the Board of Education elected a Republican, and that was the requirement of the charter. And that Republican worked with the Board of Education, and there was a collaborative budget that was put together, passed on a 7-1 vote. There's an election coming up. So, this all could have been resolved. But instead, what happened was $500,000 charge for lawyers that we didn't need to take on. We could have used that $500,000 and, give the schools a little bit more money. I'm concerned a little bit about the excess litigation that I feel has occurred in recent years. As your first selectman, I will not sue a police officer who puts a sign on his lawn that says bad things about me. I won't do that. I promise you. I will not. Well, it's $1.5 million. That was a lot of money we had to pay out. As for your first selectman, I will not conduct a fourth investigation of a school administrator who was accused, and then in 3 other investigations, 2 by the state and 1 by the schools, found to not have done anything wrong, and he left the district anyway. I will not do that. That costs $346,000. So litigation should be a last resort, not a first resort. Everybody knows the lawyers cost too much. Don't use them if you can avoid it. I will use powers of negotiation persuasion first, if I can.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I could stay here for 20 minutes. I'm shocked that you brought up those 3 things. Number one, the cop that was fired, and not by me, sued us. So we didn't sue him. That's number one. Number two, what my opponent's talking about, that I sued the Democrats on the Board of Education. Here are the facts that you can look up. I've said it a million times. That's why I'm shocked he brought it up. They came to, a Democratic member came to me and the Republicans came to me. They knew that after 30 days, if they don't pick a chairman, the person to fill the vacancy, which was Karen Kowalski, that it comes before the Board of Selectmen. They knew that because they played dumb that they didn't do it, but they knew that because they came to me and lobbied me. I said, I don't care. Just fix it on your own. Don't get me involved in this. 30 days. Took them 96 days, and the Republicans had 3 different candidates and they couldn't agree. Finally, they agree on one. And they said for the first time in history, a BET and a BOE did not honor the choice of the party that had the resignation. That is fact. That is fact. And they picked a Republican, I guess they call him a Republican name only, the Rhino tag, which they call everybody now. And she said she was going to vote for the Democrat. And they said, well, in the paper, would you caucus with the Republicans? She goes, well, why wouldn't I? I'd like to know what they're thinking. Well, if she was a Republican, wouldn't she know what they were thinking? But here's something you could look up. We did not go to sue them. We received a letter from a lawyer that the Democrats on the BOE hired without even consulting the Republicans on there. They hired it on their own and said they were going to sue us. So what was I supposed to do? We went to outside counsel. I had to protect the process. As first selectman, I didn't bury my head in the sand. And if anybody is suggesting they would do that, then they don't belong to be first selectman. I protected the process. The moderator of the RTM supported that. She said, because I can't have people, but what they did is they said, when I said after 96 days, all right, I will appoint, finally use my power. After 96 days, they couldn't come to an agreement. And I posted state law, 24-hour notice. I posted it. What was it, 18 minutes? They posted some emergency. It was emergency. There was no emergency. There was no emergency. And that's what the RTM said. We can't have people posting things for political reasons saying there's an emergency when there wasn't. So I defended the process, and I would do it tomorrow. And just so you know, I did reach out twice on 2 different occasions to reach out to the Democrats to say, hey, let's have a compromise, no spike in the football. You were definitely wrong. And even one of the Freedom of Information commissioners said, it looks like they're wrong, even though they haven't ruled on it yet. And I said, we'll pull back the person that we voted for, you pull back and then pick somebody else. That was rejected. That was rejected. And then there's a person in here, I won't mention her name, who was on the BET, who said to me, can't we do something? This was a few months later. I said, would you go to them and ask? And I'm absolutely willing to sit down with them. I guess the answer was no there too. So twice I reached out. I went before the finance committee of the RTM and explained that. And many of the people, and there were Democrats in the room who said, we didn't know that. Even though I had said it a number of times, even some Republicans probably didn't know. I'd said it and wrote it many times. Right? So that is the truth. You can look, as Casey Stengel used to say, you can look it up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just repeat that I will never sue ourselves. I think that's a bad idea. And, you know.
I agree, but anyway. I guess we said enough. Said enough on that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Camillo, you lead us off for this question here. If elected, what will be your top 3 priorities in your role as first selectman?
Well, it's open-ended. I mean, just continuing what we're doing as far as public safety, pedestrian safety, getting projects done. But also, you know, we always have to defend against the crazy bills coming out of Hartford. So there's 3 things that keep me up at night, right? Local, state mandates, right? That's why I go and testify all the time up there, and I still have a good relationship with a lot of the legislators and people up there. Flood control, we've put in millions of dollars of infrastructure all over the town. Pembroke hasn't had a flood. We fixed the issue at Pembroke Park. I've worked with the congressman and Army Corps of Engineers to secure that $35 million for the 2 bridges to be widened on the post road there. And the other thing is traffic. It's something that always is going to be there. You can't drive yourself out of this. You can't mandate how many cars people have. So you have to work with technology to make it more efficient and increase a more effective flow of traffic. So those are 3 things that keep me up at night, because you don't have total control of them, but you can make a difference there. And thankfully, we have great staff and a team that actually has done that. So, but as far as any of the other projects, you've heard me talk about them enough already, but, and keeping Greenwich the safest town in Connecticut as it is right now.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, look, safe and affordable, those are baseline things that you can expect of a first selectman. You know, and my mission would be to honor your investment in our town by being sure we do that. But my vision for the town is, you know, one where there is a new era of fiscal responsibility that preserves our quality of life and our low taxes. It's where our assets, it's where our amenities, our infrastructure are ready for the next generation, not abandoned to the last generation. We're going to make moving around town safe, easy, and quick. I've talked about that. We're going to protect our schools because that's fiscally responsible. Our property taxes and our children's futures are right there. And we do need to make flooding and flood control a priority. We are behind. We do not do enough. And every year we're at risk. And the risk is increasing. Your taxes, your insurance rates for your home have increased 13% last year, and that's because of wind and storm damage. They're not going to get worse, not going to get better before they get worse. So what we need to do is we need to have clear, prioritized projects that will give us the space to stay healthy, to not get washed away like a flume into the Sound. And I'm going to do that as first selectman.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. So we have 10 minutes left, and you each are going to get 2-minute closings. I would like to maybe squeeze one more question in, if that's possible, but I just want to kind of keep time limits on your radar.
We could probably talk all night, right, Fred? It's it's the people here.
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
Maya, if you'd like to offer the next question.
Perfect. Okay, for our last question, this is once again directed to Mr. Moore first. Over the next 2 years, what town and school capital projects would you prioritize?
Well, so the first thing I would prioritize is the prioritization process. Let's just make that clear. We need to make sure that we are doing the right thing by our town, and we can't do that in a vacuum. Part of that process will be, as soon as I'm elected, to work with the town to understand where we are in the budgeting process right now. And I'd like to open that up even before the sort of traditional first time people see our budget, which is in January. I'd like to give the public an opportunity to weigh in on what our town is thinking about doing. So this process, and we talked a little bit about the sort of structure that would take, is really the most important piece that we could do. And, we talk about the difficulty of estimating what, the work would be if we had to do something. This is well known in, product management and, project management. You have basically you have a strategic capital plan, and the further out something is, the fuzzier the numbers are. We're not going to pick one of the ones from the back of the plan and bring them to the front. We're going to make sure that we have a process that gives us those kinds of things. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to be sure to prepare in a way that allows us to act quickly. Right now, we don't do enough design plans. We don't have shovel-ready projects in the design phase enough to be able to sort of act on them when we want to do that. So all of this is part of the process. Rather than identify this one, that one, and the other one, I just want to point out that it's really about the process itself first.
Thank you. So yeah, we've talked about a lot of the projects already, but when you put together a capital project, you got to be able to pivot. And unfortunately, when you have a Board of Education building fails, you have to pivot. And a lot of the projects that I ran on and people supported, we've had to push back because we have to live under the guidelines of the BET. So, if in a perfect world, if there's no breakdowns this year, and again, that was one of the things that I always said is I wish that the building maintenance, construction maintenance of the BOE would come under the umbrella of the first selectman here in town. Because I want them to focus on education, because all of the major building failures have not been town buildings. They've been Board of Ed buildings. So that should be under ours, under the umbrella of the first selectman and the town of Greenwich, because not that they do a bad job, they just can't handle that. And unfortunately, that's what the record is. So I would bring that over to our end here and let us handle it. But, and not cut staff, we could bring some of the people over there, but it should be under one umbrella here. In a perfect world, I would have the project, again, we're gonna hopefully get it going next year for the waterfront there, so which is to redesign the waterfront there, give us a view of the sound that we haven't had, the harbor, since 1952, I believe, and also create a better flow of traffic at the town transfer station, better known as the dump to a lot of us that have been here. Because we also, is costly to us. And also we're getting more and more, focused on recycling. We've added 2 recyclables, things that are being taken out of the waste stream, textiles and food scraps, but that's just the beginning. And, we have to do a little bit better on that. And so getting those municipal solid waste numbers down and recycling numbers up, as well as creating better traffic down there. And we don't have enough staff down there really for people to come in different ends of the transfer station. So that would be my thing, because you're going to fix 2 problems here. You're going to fix the transfer station or the dump, and also create a much more beautiful Roger Sherman Bowman Park. But again, having said that, God forbid tomorrow something could happen and we have to pivot and reprioritize. That's the reason why it gets really difficult. You don't know what tomorrow brings. I go to bed at night sometimes, everything is fine. I wake up at 4 o'clock and there's a disaster. And that's everybody, and that's life. That's personal life too, right? So we have to deal with that. So it's easy for the 2 of us to sit up here tonight and say, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, and in a perfect world, we're going to get all. It doesn't work that way. We don't have an unlimited checkbook, right? It's your money. It is your money. And that's why Greenwich has always been a financially conservative town. and it's saved us money since the 1930s, right? We had a pay-as-you-go system up until around 2000. When I was on the Parks and Recreation Board, we finally did a modified pay-as-you-go when we purchased 2/3 of the Tuckman Pomerantz property in Coscob. 5-year note, we paid it off in a couple of years, right? And that's okay. That's not throwing out the conservative fiscal responsibility and policies we've had. You can amend it as time goes on, but you don't want to ever throw it out, because then you're no better than the rest of the state or a lot of those cities that have failed doing that. And again, are some of our neighboring states.
Yeah, and I would just add that Greenwich has kept the illusion of low taxes by deferring maintenance and capital projects long before Fred and I were adults. That is how we have managed to keep our tax rates so low. And at a certain point, and we're getting to that point, we discover that there's all this stuff that we need to take care of, and we haven't done that. And so we are in that moment now, and that's why we need to bring in a new era of fiscal responsibility and leadership to be able to handle the problems we're facing. It doesn't mean we spend more money, it means we spend our money more wisely. And by that I mean, pay-as-you-go is a bad way to be doing large capital projects. Nobody buys their house all at once unless they won the lottery. You buy it over 30 years and you live in it for as long as you can, and then you move on. We should be doing the same thing. Every other municipality in the United States does it this way, and we should do the same. Now, not every project needs that, but if we had done longer-term bonding for Central Middle School and for Old Greenwich School, the two projects that we're doing right now, which we're planning on doing on 5-year bonds, plus a couple of years of bond anticipation notes ahead of it, you know what? Our cash flow would be greater. We are right now facing a little bit of a cash crunch. You've heard the words mill rate shock and that kind of thing. That's because we have not paid attention to the most cost-effective way to finance projects. And on a partisan basis, we've said, let's pay as you go. I don't think that's smart. I think it's time for a fresh look. And I think fiscal responsibility can do both things. It can keep our taxes low and improve our quality of life.
And I would agree, but I do not want to pile debt on the next generation, because you know what? We didn't inherit that, and that would be really selfish to do it to the next generation. So I do think there is a way to get these projects done and to keep taxes affordable. I can tell you, I have had, lots of older relatives. My Aunt Jenny, I would tell her all the time, you're eligible for a tax abatement, and she wouldn't do it. She looked at it as welfare, but she had earned it. And she had volunteered it. But she struggled, and a lot of people struggle. I'm not going to do it. I know what other towns are paying. I know I've seen people move away. Met a guy Sunday who had moved to Westport, and he said, you told me on Sunday, he said, you told me, Fred, I was going to regret moving to Westport, which is a really nice town, and you were right, and I came back. He came back a couple months ago. So again, it's balance, but you want to keep that affordability, because not a third of the people here are almost a third are in the ALICE category: asset limited, income constrained, and employed. A quarter of our kids are on free and reduced lunch in the public schools. We've always been a diverse community here. I'm a product of it. Lauren's a product of that. We've lived it. And we want people to stay here. We want them to retire here. Greenwich is the first dementia-friendly designation in the state. We are an age-friendly designated town in the state. We want to keep it that way.
Yeah, and none of that will change by putting a school on a 20-year bond. And that's straight up. None of that will change.
Thank you to both of the candidates. If I could just get the audience to just settle for our closing statements. Mr. Camillo, because of the prior to the debate, we chose order. So again, you're going to lead us off with your 2-minute closing statement, followed by Mr. Moore.
I'll be watching. I'm going to try not to screw up this time. Thank you. I want to thank everybody again for being here tonight, and my opponent and Anthony. It has truly been the honor of my lifetime to serve my hometown here. I wake up every day and I'm grateful for that opportunity. On December 1st, 2019, when Lauren and I took office, we said that we would absolutely respect our cherished tradition here in town and everything about that, but marry it with a bright, bold vision for our future. And we've done that. In 6 years, the town has really changed and come along in spite of the fact that we've run into some of the most challenging events of the last 120 years in our nation. Whether it was a 100-year pandemic or a 500-year flood, we've come out of it. We've looked for opportunities to come out of it. We now have an energy policy with EMAC that I started. I said I would get a sustainability committee and focus on environmentalism. We've purchased through public-private partnerships hundreds of acres of open space to keep the green in Greenwich. Right? We've hired the great Joe Lasella for emergency operations and partnered with our police and fire to make us the safest town in the state. We've kept our mill rate the lowest, basically, in the state. We have communicated, enhanced our communications with a weekly e-blast and daily communications on social media. We've fought for local control. We have increased our affordable housing stock by 15% with local control and guidance, not a state mandate for people who want a one-size-fits-all mandate for that. So, and we've been vocal about it. Some have stayed silent. I've gone up there and I've debated and I've testified, and even Governor Lamont has said Greenwich has shown the way in that. So again, we are firing on all cylinders. And are we perfect? No. And the minute you think because you've got a #1 rating or you're A+ this or you're number 10, that's when you start to slip. And we will not slip. That's why we strategize. We meet weekly with all our department heads, and we will keep pushing Greenwich forward to make it the greatest destination still to this day for people around the globe. So thank you very much. God bless you all, and appreciate you listening tonight.
Okay.
And I, too, want to thank the League of Women Voters, Fred, Maya, Anthony, for putting on what's really an important biennial event. And I thank all of you for being here and not watching Monday Night Football. It may not have started yet. Because I think you are the most active and engaged residents in this town. And so thank you all, those of you who are also watching online. You know, when I first met my wife-to-be, I told her that being a journalist was something of a mission to listen to people and to report what I learned and report what matters to them. I came from the Walter Cronkite tradition, and, you know, for those of you who are Gen Xers or millennials, just Google that. He was known as the most trusted man in America. And trust is really the only currency a journalist has. Later, when I was in business, I carried that same sense of mission for customers, the customers who we sought to serve. Listen and act. I know it takes time to build trust, of course. But I hope after this session that I've made the case for a new era of fiscal responsibility and leadership. And if you entrust me and Rachel with your vote, we will take that pact to public office, and then we will listen, we will lead, and we will act. I ask for your vote. Thank you.